is also a former social worker and a political campaign activist.
Some people in town say the base is run by aliens working with our federal government to conduct mind control and genetic experiments.
I'm leaving. I'm glad. Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass.
Hello out there. Welcome to the Eerie Americas.
This is Vicky Ayala.
And I'm Kristi Hull. Thanks for joining us. Today is March 8th, and I'm very fortunate to be with one of my favorite women on International Women's Day. So happy International Women's Day. Yay, we have ovaries. So that's what this day's about.
Pretty much. I texted every woman I know today, and they were
Yeah.
just like, yay! And everything was about, I don't know, it's weird because I feel like it's International Women's Day, and every single woman I talked to today had like some woman-specific problem. Like, is this what this day is about? We all just have the same womanly issues today.
Vicky and I were in a group chat, and like we were all just chatting, and we're all like, wow, we all feel the same exact way. It was like we were all linked up, and I took the day off today at work, which is something that became kind of a freak show somehow. The one day that I take off, of course, I'm the problem solver. When the problem solver is not there, you become the problem. I had a huge issue at work, and I called the only female VP, and she had my back, and I was just like, yes, this is
all in sync today.
That's what today's about. So we have a very long road to go, but we have taken the first few steps, and we're going to keep going as women because that's what we do. We survive, we adjust, we adapt. Saying, remember from the show, from the Fire episode? Adapt, react, readapt, adapt.
Yeah. Readapt, react. Love it.
So that's what we do. You know, we keep on keeping on, and I'm really happy that we at least have one full day. I think every day should be Women's Day, but I'm glad that there is an international recognition that it's important for us to be able to express ourselves and express that we love each other and that we love being women. Well, I love being a woman.
We all have each other's backs. And please do not, as a man, send us any type of emails asking us when International Men's Day is, because one, there is one, and two, it's pretty much every day.
Yeah, you guys get a day every day. You get to wake up every day, at least American. Generally, men around the world, every day is your day. So give us a goddamn break. Let us have this one day, okay? But
Why, thank you.
So yeah, so that's pretty much it. We're not gonna go too hard into anything because we do have quite a long episode today, but Vicky has an email, that our first official email from our Gmail account.
Yay.
So we are still taking emails. If you have a story or anything you'd love to hear in the intro, we would love to hear from you guys. But this is our first email, and please do tell.
Okay, so the subject line of this email is Ginger from Tinder.
Uh-oh.
Nothing good can start with
Anything
Ginger from Tinder.
that starts with Tinder is never a good thing.
Every single woman in New York is guilty of it, has done it, kind of like it is the norm nowadays. I had recently gone through a bad breakup and just wanted to look around and find someone who I can have a good time with and possibly have these good times lead to something else. What do? Turn to dating apps. I was never a fan of those, but in all honesty, after this 5-year relationship ended, I became quite the slut. In a good way. Because, you know, men can do whatever they want and women can't. But we're not going to go there. This was a big no-no coming from a very off-the-boat Italian family. One day I got a notification that me and this guy, let's call him Champ, that they matched.
Good start.
Yeah. Champ seemed like a great guy. Tall, stocky, built, ginger hair. He owned his own home, or so he said, and worked in the theater field. Sounds nice, right? Well, let's fast forward. A few weeks after talking, my friend and I went to watch a Broadway show, and guess who happened to be in the area? Champ. We decided to grab a bite to eat after my show was done, and it seemed like he was normal. After eating, we all parted ways. However, my friend did get a look at his debit card and got his full name, which was great. Girls, always back up your friends whenever they start dating a new guy that we don't know, so big props to your friend right there. That's basically where things get a little juicy. Mm-hmm. The next morning, I wake up from a text from Champ asking to see me again. Champ did not live near me, which at the time was Staten Island. He lived upstate. So my dumbass thought, this is a wonderful idea, and went along with it. I remember it was a weekday on a cold January night, snow was on the ground, and here is my dumbass driving my old beat-up car to this guy's house who I've only met once.
The things we do for love. Or attempted love. Not even love.
Attempted love.
Attempt at love.
I get to his house, and after about 5 minutes, I'm butt naked in his room. He pulls it out, and it looks like an anteater.
Oh, no.
If you don't know what an anteater looks like, please do yourself a favor and Google it. It's amazing.
No.
I figure, okay, I can work with this. No turning back now. First red flag, he only likes one position. And she puts, I dare to be different. So I'm on my back and I normally like it rough. So we are going at it for a few minutes. And then he begins to wrap his fingers around my neck, which normally I love, and did not let go.
Oh, hell no.
I felt it get tighter and tighter, and I was soon struggling for air. I remember thinking to myself, this is it, you dumbass. You're going to die while having sex. You met with a fucking serial killer. This is some horror movie shit. Finally, I was able to twist myself to a point where he had to let go. I get up, and he's looking at me like nothing is wrong. Try not to freak out and really make this guy get so mad at me that he will kill me. I calmly said it was getting so late and I had to go.
That was really smart. I would have been like, you psychopath. Like,
oh no, somebody would have died. I don't know who it would have been.
Yeah,
somebody
that
would've.
was really wise. Like, your immediate reaction would be to react, but that was very brilliant on her end. I have to give props for you there.
I remember my 2-hour commute home and just thanking everything high and mighty that I left without it possibly getting worse. What if I couldn't maneuver myself that he had to let go? What if I died? No one really knows where I am. How will my parents react knowing their dumbass of a daughter decided to drive 2 hours for dick and died for it?
That's such a great way to phrase that. Getting dick and dying for it. That's so awesome. Wow. That's the greatest email. That's the best email yet. Yeah, that's the standard, guys. If you ever want to email us, that's the standard. Whether it's
you have to match almost dying for dick.
Yeah. So and for a redheaded serial killer. No
less. Ginger? Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll admit it. I'm an anti-ginger. Not for females. Men, I could never see myself being with a ginger.
My boyfriend's a half a ginger. His beard is red.
But it's not full blown Chucky red hair. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't.
But she said, this experience made me question so many things, and after I stopped doing what I was doing for a while, the moral of the story, never meet a ginger from Tinder alone. You literally might not make it out alive.
Wow, ginger from... Did she, like, call Tinder or, like...
I don't think she did, but I remember hearing this story live because it is a friend of mine. And it was so weird because we just like went out to dinner randomly and she just told this story. I'm looking at her like, I'm like, wait, what? And she's like casually telling it. And I'm like, it's not casual just because you got out of it without dying. What is wrong with you? Why wouldn't you tell us where you were? What the fuck? And she's just like, I got out of it.
I don't know. I think I would have called the cops too because it's like, obviously, this is a guy who's dangerous to other people. Like, I think I would have gone to the point where I would have been like, hey, this crazy thing just happened to me and I just wanted to report it. So if this guy kills anybody... name
that my friend got from his debit card?
If it were me, I think I would have called the cops and at least filed a complaint because if this guy does go on a serial killing spree, there's a evidence that it was already a problem in the beginning. I'm just saying that would be me personally because I wouldn't want it to happen to somebody else.
Just be careful, ladies.
Yeah, please don't drive far out of the way in the dead of the cold. Just
where there's a lot of people. Always, at least if you're going to do that, send your location to your friends or your someone that can make sure that they check on you if they don't hear from you for a while.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy that my friend was smart enough to get out of it and that she's still here to annoy my life.
And did she delete the app?
Oh yeah. No, after this she was done. Like she
at
was
least delete the app.
Super done with dating apps, with everything. She meets people in real life now and that's it. And like I've always been like scared of dating apps and I'm so glad I'm not single because I don't know what I would do if I had to do any of the stuff that single women right now have to do. I think I'd just be single forever because I'm not getting on a dating app. I'm not Tindering. I'm not swiping.
I think even though we're quote unquote millennials, we just passed that.
We just got out of that
where it was regular to go meet your future or former in a bar or a club or through friends. Like I know a ton of people that meet everybody and that doesn't happen all the time, but that's also, to be fair, it could happen whether you met someone on an app or you met them in the street. So you just take that chance when you get to know strangers, period. But there's something also really creepy about the Tinder app itself.
I just think it's something creepy about the fact that I feel like you lived upstate and you purposely talked to a girl you know lives like 2 hours away from you and would come upstate because you knew that you were far enough away where nobody was going to make it right away.
That sounds like a serial killer. It most definitely does. I'm
going to get his name.
Yeah. Maybe we'll talk about him one day on the show. Who knows?
Right. But today we actually have a fairly, I wouldn't say common story, but it's probably going to be more common because when this episode comes out, there is actually going to be a series on Hulu about it. So I kind of wanted to touch on it before it comes out. It comes out on March 20th, and it's the Gypsy Rose Blanchard story. And we're going to discuss the murder of Dee Dee Blanchard. Okay, so let's get into the early life and marriage of Dee Dee Blanchard. She was born, her name was Claudine, I think it's Pitre, in Louisiana near the Gulf Coast in 1967. During her childhood, and this is according to her relatives, she would occasionally engage in petty theft. And basically, she did this in retaliation to when things didn't go her way, which I don't know anybody who reacts to not getting your way by stealing stuff, but that's basically what it was.
I mean, that's kind of
theft.
the start of obviously, those are warning signs. That's a big warning sign. You definitely should get somebody help at that point.
Big red flag. At some point in her early life, she worked as a nurse's aide, which when you hear this story, it is important. When she was 24, she became pregnant by Rod Blanchard. She was 24, he was 17.
Ooh.
They named their daughter Gypsy Rose since Claudine liked the name Gypsy and Rod was a fan of Guns N' Roses. Shortly before Gypsy Rose's birth in 1991, the couple separated when Rod, as he has stated in interviews, realized that she had gotten married for the wrong reason. Despite Claudine's efforts to get Rod to return, he didn't. And so she ended up taking her newborn and going to live with her family. She has a nephew named Bobby who recalls that Gypsy's birth might have been like slightly premature, maybe affecting her development a bit. But other than that, she had no known health issues, and it's something that her father also stated in interviews. She was born perfectly healthy. Rod did remain involved with his daughter at this point. She was 3 months old. He was still involved in her life, even though him and the mom had separated. But for some reason, Claudine, her mother, was convinced that she was suffering from sleep apnea and epilepsy. If you don't know what sleep apnea is, it is a serious sleep disorder in which your breathing stops and starts throughout the night, which I know because my boyfriend has it and he has to sleep with the machine, but that's basically what it is. You start breathing, stop breathing several times throughout the night. So at this point, she takes her to the hospital, completely convinced that something is wrong with her, makes her stay overnight, sleep monitor, all these tests to be done, and there's nothing. There's no signs of it. But she's still convinced that something's wrong with her daughter. The father stated that when she was born, again, she was perfectly healthy, so he's not really sure why the mother decided something was wrong with her, but that's what she decided. After this, Claudine became convinced that Gypsy had a wide range of health issues. She attributed it to some unspecified chromosomal disorder. Nothing specific, just she has this disorder, and because of that, she has all of these diseases.
And she's the one that diagnosed that, not a doctor.
Right. She's the one that's like, there's a bunch of stuff wrong.
Like, don't get me wrong, she's a nurse, but at the same
You're not a
time,
doctor or diagnostician. Yeah, so you can't just do that.
You can't diagnose as a nurse.
So when Gypsy was 7 or 8, her nephew Bobby recalls, she was riding on her grandfather's motorcycle when she had a minor accident. She just had like a scrape on her knee. And her mother said that this was visible signs of injury. It would require several surgeries to treat properly. And from then on, Gypsy was confined to a wheelchair, although her nephew states he saw that she was completely able to walk on her own.
It's crazy.
For years, Dee Dee, well, then she was still known as Claudine, insisted to doctors that Gypsy had muscular dystrophy, asthma, epilepsy, and leukemia. Now, muscular dystrophy is basically a group of genetic illnesses that causes weakness and loss of like muscle mass. So in muscular dystrophy, you have these abnormal genes and it affects like your production of proteins, which affects your muscles. And so your damaged muscles just become weaker and weaker. So most people in this condition eventually need a wheelchair. They have trouble breathing. They have trouble swallowing.
So this is pretty easy to see. Like this isn't
Right.
anything. This isn't anything where
You can't
test for it or there's no some visible signs. So this is nothing that Gypsy was actually suffering for, according to anybody except her mother.
But that's
correct?
what's important in this story because like there's a lot of things that go wrong here, and one of the things that there are some medical records that suggest that the doctors mostly just took her mother's word for it and didn't even run further tests because you would think a woman comes in with her daughter in a wheelchair, she's not lying about it.
I guess that's true.
So Gypsy is in a wheelchair. She often goes with her parents to Special Olympic events. Now, the father, from what I've researched, he didn't live there, and he assumed that the mother was honest, so he also thought something was wrong with his daughter. So they used to attend Special Olympic events together. He really believed that she was sick. He would frequently tell her mother, you're such a great mom. I don't know how you handle all this with Gypsy being so sick. I don't think I could deal with this. Just basically praising her for what good of a mom she is. Now, in 2001, Claudine was claiming that Gypsy was 8. Gypsy was actually 10. And she was named the honorary queen of the Crew of Mid-City Parade, which is a child-oriented parade held during Mardi Gras in New Orleans. It also seems that Gypsy actually stopped going to school around the 2nd grade, but some people say it could have been possibly as early as kindergarten.
So she didn't even let her go get her education.
No, she actually homeschooled her, claiming that her illnesses were too severe to go to school. But Gypsy did manage to learn to read on her own through the Harry Potter book. But she did. She learned to learn to read on her own.
Hey, of all things to learn to read, that's like kind of a cool thing to choose.
And they're not the easiest books to read either, so that's cool. But the weird thing is that she did this, but one of the things that the mother said is that Gypsy had the mental capacity of like a 7.
I don't know a lot of 7-year-olds that can read
I
Harry
barely
Potter.
could read those books at 10, so.
Yeah, I don't know who can read Potter at 7.
So
Right.
that's what she said. So Gypsy's father gets remarried. Her mother never did.
Yeah, because she's too busy
pretending that her daughter's
pretending
sick.
her kid is sick. So why would she need a
So-
man?
They do end up living with the grandmother and step grandmother because it's it's Claudine father and stepmom.
Got it.
And they said that just a lot of things kind of went down when Claudine was living there. That she would prepare food and put like weed killer in it,
What?
making the stepmom really, really sick. And they knew it had to be that because later on, when Gypsy and her mom leave, her stepmother like miraculously was fine.
That's insane. I would have called the cops on her. That's nuts. Like
But I
if
guess
I were the
I don't think
stepmom.
they really knew it till after. But like there's things that went like during this time, she was also arrested for minor offenses, including writing bad checks. So she was still kind of like doing that petty theft stuff.
But like just to go back to that briefly, doesn't that kind of stuff stay in your system for a while? Couldn't she have gone to get a blood test? Like the
She probably
stepmother?
could have, but I don't know. Maybe because they were family, or she didn't have enough proof, or it's like, you know what, I'm fine and you're gone, so whatever.
Maybe,
But
yeah.
I mean, you just kind of left the kid alone with her.
Right, that's my
And
thing.
what's gonna make you more upset is that they actually did confront her about her treatment of Gypsy and telling them that they were suspicious in what she was doing towards her stepmother and that they didn't think Gypsy was sick. So basically, what Claudine did was picked up and moved. They just moved somewhere else.
That's very typical of child abuse cases. It's easier to run away and not have to deal with anything because you could start over new. No one's going to find it suspicious that a mother and daughter are
Right.
together. It's just going to be a family trying a new place. That's how people look at it. They're not thinking, oh, she's running away to confine her daughter away from everyone else she knows and that will be able to help her if there's some genuine concerns. So very classic behavior.
Yeah, she moves her, and basically, due to all of the supposed medical conditions that Gypsy has, they get a lot of help. They get public housing, they get their bills paid for with public assistance. Plus, Rod was sending $1,200 a month in child support. So she was, she had enough money to support them. Plus, they spent most of their time like visiting various specialists. There was a couple reports I saw that she visited as much as 150 doctors in this whole time frame.
Wow.
And she basically just went to visit all these specialists all around New Orleans, just seeking treatment for her daughter's, whole myriad of these diseases that she supposedly had. She also told doctors that on top of the muscular dystrophy that her daughter was suffering from seizures every few months, so they just gave her seizure medication. No, not only that, she had several surgeries that were performed on her during this time. And Claudine basically took her to the emergency room for just minor ailments. Every little thing, they wound up in the hospital. Some of the surgeries that she went through were pretty invasive because, she claimed that she had leukemia, asthma, brain damage. And I know that she had this one surgery where I think they put like a tube in her ear to help her with her hearing because some people with muscular dystrophy have issues with that. She had her salivary glands shot with Botox to control her drooling. And at one point just removed them. And later on, like when they're talking to Gypsy and they discover some of these things were fake, Gypsy said that there would be times where she would like give her a topical numbing cream to put on her mouth so that she wouldn't be able to feel it, so she would just drool. So it would make her look like
it would look like she was actually sick. Wow. And you know what's sad about the situation? Gypsy doesn't know any better because she got treated like that her whole life. So how would she know that she's not sick? Wow.
And it just, a bunch of stuff like keeps happening. Then they live in New Orleans. Hurricane Katrina devastates the area in 2005, so their apartment gets ruined. So this is actually like a good opportunity for her because now she can just say that everything was destroyed in Hurricane Katrina, which is essentially what she does. She claims that all medical records, everything was destroyed in Katrina, so she could basically just start all over again, go to any doctor and say whatever she wants. So once she started seeing doctors, because she ended up going back to Missouri, she's like, oh, my daughter's super sick. She's in a wheelchair. She has leukemia. She has asthma. Our apartment was destroyed in Hurricane Katrina. And they basically airlift her back home. Like, do you know how much it costs to get airlifted?
Yeah.
They just airlifted them back to Missouri so that she can go back to where she was before. So at first they lived in a rented home. And during that time, they're honored by several foundations. There was the Olay Foundation, which are advocates for the right of feeding tube patients because she actually had Gypsy on a feeding tube. So a feeding tube is a device and it's used to provide nutrition to those who can't basically take it by mouth.
Right.
And you're not able to swallow, or you need some nutritional supplements and you can't get it any other way. And there's two different types. There is temporary, where you get it maybe if you're recovering from a surgery or you have like an illness that's going to go away. But when you have a permanent feeding tube, a surgeon cuts through the skin of your belly, inserts the tube right into your stomach so you can deliver liquid formula or, some kind of mixture. So she had her daughter on a feeding tube.
I just don't know anyone that would willingly do that to their child. What bothers me about this is most people need a license to do everything but have children. and there's no stopping you because you have the reproductive ability to do it. Anyone can have a child, and it's just so scary that there's no way to kind of stop this kind of situation because it is her daughter. She can do technically whatever she wants. So it's really scary.
Okay.
But on the other level, this is someone taking total advantage of the system,
But
and
it's
that's
also people not doing their job, because we're going to learn a couple of times that things could have been done to probably prevent this. But some people didn't even know what Munchausen's one, or Munchausen by proxy is extremely rare. And
this is an extreme case, period.
This is an extreme case, and you want to take people's
You want to
word
take
for
it, right? What kind of mother would say their daughter's sick if they weren't sick? You're
Right.
making the assumption
And
that
it's
this
not
is
like
happening.
she just said like, hey, she has like pneumonia. She's in a wheelchair. She has no hair because she did shave Gypsy's head to make her look like a cancer patient. She drew, all of these things, and you're like, well, this has to be real. So in 2008, Habitat for Humanity actually builds them a home with a wheelchair ramp and a hot tub as part of a project.
Once again, taking advantage.
Because the story of a single mom with a severely disabled daughter that was forced to flee Hurricane Katrina obviously received the local media attention, and the community wanted to pitch in and help them both. So they basically take advantage of everyone because they're getting this home from Habitat to Humanity. They were being recognized by the Olay Foundation. They were getting help from Ronald McDonald House, which you remember that was really big when we were kids.
Oh, yeah.
They were getting free trips to Disney World, backstage passes to Miranda Lambert concerts from Make-A-Wish. And there's even a report that stated that Miranda Lambert at one of her concerts gave them a personal check from her personal bank account for $3,500 because she just loved this family. There's pictures of Gypsy posing with her favorite actors. She's met Elijah Wood. She meets all these people because they so badly want to help her because they feel bad. Rod Blanchard also continued to make his child support payments. So she's getting all of this stuff, plus child support payments, plus disability and all the other help that she's getting. He also continued, he sent her gifts. He would kind of sort of talk to her on the phone. But there's one particular phone call when Gypsy turned 18. He called her to speak to her. And Gypsy's mom is like, don't mention her real age because she thinks she's 14, because she was also passing her off as a little kid. Now, there is a 2020 special on this, and they do talk to Gypsy, and she literally sounds like she's 5 years old. She speaks with this little, like, small, mousy voice.
Little kid voice.
And of course, and then she's in a wheelchair, and she's already small, and her head is shaved, and she barely speaks, and it's like she looks and acts, telling people she has a mental capacity. And there's also reports that I read when I was doing the research that she would basically tell Gypsy when she was going to doctor's appointments to like hold her stuffed animal and just play with it and don't say anything. And they said that in every medical report, it just kept saying, mother stated, mother stated, mother stated. Gypsy never spoke. So, of course, they're sitting here thinking that there's a mentally handicapped girl with all of these ailments. The mother obviously loves her and cares for her so much, and she's doing everything she possibly can to get her help. Of course, she's passing her off as younger because when she's 18, you might not get some of the assistance. It said that Rod, her father, and his second wife, they attempted to make visits, and there would always be an excuse for why the visit couldn't be made. And when the visits were made, they were never allowed to be in the room alone with Gypsy. Dee Dee was always in the room with them. And please note that her name is Claudine, and she did change her name once she moved because she wanted to be known as Dee Dee. And, her neighbors didn't really know Gypsy's father, and when they asked about him, Dee Dee would say that he was an abusive drug addict and alcoholic who never came to terms with his daughter's health and never sent them any money, and that, the reason... Because people, later on, they do find out that her name is not really Dee Dee. And she does, she has all these, like, little charges for bank checks. And she basically just says to people, well, I don't want him to find me, and I don't want him to find Gypsy. And then, of course, to them, it makes sense because that would be a reason for you to change your name. I don't want, he's abusive, he's an alcoholic, he never helps, so I don't want him to find. It makes sense, right?
Wow, that's pretty
And
bananas.
everybody who meets Gypsy is charmed by her because if you watch these videos, she was like this kid that was supposed to be so sick, but she was still so happy and so grateful because in her head, she,
Any day she can die,
right?
As far as she knows, so. And
she's super tiny. She's only 5 feet tall. She doesn't have a lot of teeth. She's like almost toothless. She had these large glasses, a high childlike voice, so it made it seem like she had all those problems. She wore like these wigs to cover her baldness because her mother was always shaving her head. When they left the house, Dee Dee would take an oxygen tank with her. Like she looked super.
And it's funny.
sick.
I remember the posters for the Ronald McDonald. She was kind of like their poster child, and the mom, Dee Dee, was in that photo. Like I remember distinctly. Like for her, I think it made it seem like if Gypsy's getting the attention, then I'm getting the attention.
But that's what it is when you learn about Munchausen by proxy later. That people don't do it for like money. They do it mostly for attention and sympathy. So at this time, she's always bringing the oxygen tank when they go up. And it said that she used physical abuse to control Gypsy. So it's not like Gypsy could be like, hey, I can walk. Like her mother abused her. Gypsy stated in an interview that whenever she suggested that she wasn't really sick or like spoke above what her mental capabilities were supposed to be, what Gypsy's mom would do is she would always hold her hand in public so she would look like a loving mom. But if Gypsy so much as said anything that she wasn't supposed to, she would squeeze her hand. Basically, she's controlling the situation.
Telling her to shut up, basically.
And when the two of them were alone, Dee Dee would strike her with open hands or a coat hanger. There is a point where there are people who start to be suspicious. So there's a doctor, Dr. Flasterstein. He was a pediatric neurologist, and he was one of the doctors who saw her in Springfield, and he became really suspicious of the muscular dystrophy. He still ordered MRIs and blood tests. He was trying to test for muscular dystrophy and cerebral palsy. He found no abnormalities. He also called up doctors in New Orleans, and remember, she said that all of the medical files were destroyed in Katrina, but when he called, he was able to speak to someone about the medical files. So he's like, all right, that wasn't true either. And even there basically told him kind of treat them with treat them with little kid gloves. We already know them. That's how the mother is. So when he confronted Dee Dee and said, she doesn't have any of these ailments. And at one time he had Gypsy stand up to support her own weight, and she did it and said, I don't see any reason why she doesn't walk. And Dee Dee was also not a good historian. When a historian in medical terms is basically you report the history of medical conditions. She wasn't a good historian because she probably couldn't even keep up with her own lies. So after, contacting the doctors and noticing that she's not a good historian and the fact that she's actually getting mad at the fact that he's suggesting that her daughter can walk, she basically was upset. He undermined all of her claims, and basically found out that she was lying about the medical records not being there and being destroyed. And she stormed out of the office. When she storms out of the office, she starts yelling, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Never goes back, and then moves Gypsy's care 3 hours away just because this doctor confronted her.
Well, good. I mean, at least someone called her out on her shit.
Yeah, and he's the first one that thought that maybe she had Munchausen's by proxy, which it's a pattern of behavior in which caretakers make up or induce illnesses, can be mental or physical, in a person for no obvious benefit other than attention or sympathy. The thing is that he didn't follow up, and he never reported her to social services. And in the interview, he stated he didn't report it because he didn't have enough evidence. To me, that seems like bullshit, because you have more than enough evidence to see that she didn't have those conditions, and you still didn't report it.
And not only just that, too, we also have to factor, and like anyone else in this world, we consider the source. Who are you going to believe? The doctor who not only treated Gypsy or checked her out, but talk to the mother and can genuinely say, I've never seen that in a case where a mother's upset that their kid's actually healthier than what it is. If you said that to social services, they would immediately raise their eyebrows. But because you're the doctor, if anyone else, a random person in the street, had that conversation, they wouldn't take it seriously. But because it's a
Right.
medical doctor that is respected in the community, he would have been taken seriously.
And that's what's crazy, because he also, at one point, it stated in the research that he thought that maybe authorities wouldn't believe him. But I'm like, why wouldn't they believe a doctor? And also, if you don't believe the doctor and you don't believe Dee Dee, believe the science are accurate. You know what I mean? I don't know how you thought that. But eventually someone does report it anonymously, stating that they don't think that her health is as bad as they seem, and they ask for a wellness check. So police officers go. This is in 2009. So the officers who performed the wellness check accepted Dee Dee's explanation that. So go back a little bit. One of the things that also was stated before the wellness check is that she was using multiple names and multiple birth dates and birth certificates about Gypsy. So they go there and they actually accept her explanation that the reason she changed her name was to escape her abusive husband. And they didn't even decide, check the story out. They're just like, okay, sure.
And my thing with this whole changing your name crap, don't you always have to go to an official place? Don't you have to go to social security? Don't you have to go to those things?
But when you got married,
when I got married,
go to all this stuff to
I
just
had
change
to
your last
go
name.
to hell and high water just to get all of these things. I had to scan 1,000,000 times over my marriage certificate. I had to go to a bunch of buildings. I had to make a bunch of phone calls. I had to make all this proof for all these things. How can somebody just change their name and it's just accepted? I don't
it's the same
understand.
way that she was changing her birth certificates to make her look younger. I don't know how she did that. And it's I've lost my birth certificate before, and I just went right to the records and I got a new birth certificate. And for you to just accept the explanation, oh, well, Hurricane Katrina flooded it. Okay, but did they flood the entire database where everybody's birth certificate is?
2005.
At this point,
everything's digitized at this point, period.
Every single person that was misplaced during Hurricane Katrina did not use this excuse for anything. And so they're doing this wellness check. They take her explanation for it. And then because she's always basically coached Gypsy on how to act, they said that she genuinely looked handicapped. So they said, okay, everything seems fine, and closed the case. Nothing was done.
Poor Gypsy.
Yep. So now we're getting to the 2010s. Now by this time, even though she's passing Gypsy off as a teenager, Gypsy in 2010 is 19. So at this point, you're an adult.
Wow.
She knows she's not sick. So she starts to test the limitations of her mom's like scheme.
Wow, at age 19.
At 19, she finally starts to just test the limitations. Mind you, she's still acting the way she's been told to act, and she's basically acting like a 15, 16-year-old.
And that goes to show you the mind control that her mother had on
Of
her.
course.
So sad.
Gypsy revealed in an interview from prison in that 2020 special that we will put on our website. It is very interesting because they speak to Gypsy, they speak to her father, they speak to her stepmother, they speak to the family. And she basically said that she did attempt to escape once and that Dee Dee chained her to the bed.
What?
This is a quote from Gypsy. She physically chained me to the bed and put bells on the doors and told anybody that I probably would have trusted that I was going through a phase and to tell her if I was doing anything behind her back. Physically chained her to the bed and put bells on the door so she couldn't do anything.
Psychotic bitch.
And then another neighbor recalled an incident that was either in 2009, 2010, so either way, Gypsy's about 18, 19. Gypsy showed up at her door one night without her wheelchair, standing, walking, looking for a ride to a local hospital to visit a man who she met on the internet and shared a romantic interest in him. It states that her mom disapproved of her, she would talk, she had one friend that was a neighbor who, again, everybody still thinks she's a teenager. And whenever she would talk about boys and liking boys, her mom completely disapproved of it, said you're not allowed to talk about big girl things. But Gypsy still set up an online dating profile because she's a girl and there's nothing wrong with her and she's having these feelings and she wants to date. So apparently the reason she wanted to go to the hospital is because when a group of people who knew Gypsy's medical history learned that was the woman he was meeting, they thought he was taking advantage of a mentally challenged underage girl and beat the shit out of him. And he wound up in the hospital. That's how far this went.
Wow. So the mother's controlling everyone around her.
So Gypsy goes to the hospital with her real birth certificate saying, hey, I'm 19. The mother shows up with a birth certificate with the incorrect age, but telling her that this is the real birth certificate. The one that she's showing you is the fake one. Her records were destroyed in Katrina, and she actually made Gypsy apologize to everyone. Everybody believed her, and she made Gypsy apologize.
What the hell? Oh, dear, 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 sweet baby Jesus.
So, since 2001, Gypsy had been attending these science fiction and fantasy conventions, sometimes in costume, because it was one of the only places she could blend in.
Right.
Even in her wheelchair.
Right, makes sense.
So at an event in 2011 was kind of like another escape attempt with a man she met online. And again, Dee Dee produced paperwork with her fake age, her fake birth date, and basically was like, this girl's underage, I'm going to report you to the police. Mind you, Gypsy in 2011 is already 20. No, 21.
21. She
Insane.
can drink, but her mom's trying to tell her that she's going to call the cops for rape.
And she said that Gypsy recalls that after this happened, Dee Dee smashed her computer with a hammer and threatened to do the same to her fingers if she ever tried to escape again. She also kept Gypsy leashed and handcuffed to her bed for 2 weeks. Then Dee Dee also told Gypsy that she had filed paperwork with the police claiming that Gypsy was medically incompetent, leading Gypsy to believe that if she even attempted to go to the police for help, they wouldn't believe her because they would think that she wasn't competent enough to make these decisions. Sometime around 2012, Gypsy did continue to use the internet.
How did she do that?
She basically waited for her mom to go to bed and somehow made online contact with, she ends up meeting this guy named Nicholas Godejohn, who was around her real age from Wisconsin. They met on a Christian dating site. Mm-hmm. And she just basically spills everything to him. She tells him,
I remember this, yeah.
You can read the messages online, just telling, she still actually does believe she's kind of sick. When they spoke to Gypsy about it later, she knew she could walk, she knew she had muscular dystrophy, but she actually believed that she did have leukemia at some point. So she's telling him about how she feels, I want to date, but my mom, and I'm sick. And he just, he listens to her, and, this is online, and falls in love with it.
You can put your guard down online.
Right. And he also has issues of his own. He had his own criminal record for indecent exposure. He had a history of mental illness. They think that he might have had either a dissociative identity disorder, or a lot of people say he was on the autism spectrum. So you have two people who have their own issues that are just relying on each other. And, it's easy to see how they formed a relationship.
Because they're considered odd in most of the society. They found some kind of connection together.
Right, because he was thought to have mental capacity of a 16-year-old, and her whole life she's been made to feel like she's a little kid.
Right.
So it made sense. So now we're in 2014. At this point, she's 23. Gypsy has a neighbor named Aaliyah Woodmansey, who's 23, who again is unaware of that Gypsy's really 23, still thinks she's a teenager. But Gypsy confides to her because she thinks she's like a big sister, that she and Nicholas Godejohn had discussed eloping and had chosen names for their potential children, and she like, this is her first boyfriend.
Right.
You know, she has like these secret Facebook accounts and they would flirt online. They would sometimes send like little BDSM messages. Woodmansey tried to talk her out of it because she thought Gypsy was too young. Again, she thinks she's, young. And she didn't want her to be taken advantage of by a sexual predator. She thinks she's still sick and she's this young girl looking out for her. But she also thought that her plans in her head were like fantasy. She was like, this is a fantasy. It's just a dream. She didn't ever think this was going to happen. So she just listens to her, tries to talk her out of it, but thinks that this is a girl in a wheelchair who feeds through a feeding tube. She doesn't think she's going to do anything.
And also, she's a teenager. Like, all of us went
and
through that.
all of a sudden, we're all running away.
We all met our first boyfriend or girlfriend, and we thought that they'd be together. You name your kids, you do this, you do that. We all go through that phase. It's a completely normal thing. So she's thinking she's talking to, like, a teen in love. Like, that's what she's thinking.
So she's just like, okay, no problem. And she thinks she's a big sister. I'm 23. I'm going to give you advice. And, Dee Dee really did try to keep Gypsy away from the internet. She smashed her phone at one point, too. But, she still has this relationship with Woodmansey and her neighbor. And she still maintained contact with Nicholas also. And Woodmansey, Gypsy she had secret Facebook accounts and she used to just, like, post stuff. And for some reason, Woodmansey, like, she kept, like, printouts of some of the posts that Gypsy would make.
So weird.
It was weird, but it does come in handy later. The next year, around 2015, Gypsy actually arranges and pays for Nicholas Godejohn to meet her mother in Springfield. Her plan was actually for him to just randomly bump into her while she and her mom were at a movie theater, both of them in costume, not really sure why, and just strike up a relationship that way so that he could get introduced to the mother and hopefully she would be more open to them. As soon as Gypsy meets Nicholas Godejohn for the first time in real life, Nicholas says they had sex in the bathroom.
Good for her.
Good for her. She's 20-something years old. There's nothing
She
wrong
needed
with
to
her.
experience that. Good for her.
Apparently, she didn't find him as desirable in person as she thought she would, and her mother thought he was creepy.
Well, she's one to talk. That's all I gotta say.
But they still continue their interactions on the internet, and they kind of begin hatching some plans to get Gypsy away from Dee Dee. From some of the research I did, there was a couple of plans, and they followed through with murder, obviously. So Godejohn actually returns to Springfield, where Gypsy lives in June of 2015. He comes down while he knows that Gypsy and her mom are away at a doctor's appointment. The plan was that she was supposed to let him know when they were back home. Mm-hmm. So she gets back home. Her mom goes to sleep. She says, hey, my mom's asleep. Gypsy said that she was so terrified that she actually took medication that wasn't even prescribed to her just to calm herself down because she knew what was happening. She lets him in the house, allegedly gives him duct tape, gloves, a knife to murder her mom. But she admits later on that she didn't really think he would do it. Again, although there's nothing wrong with her, you have to think that there's some sort of delay because of the way that she was treated and brought up. Maybe she didn't really understand the consequences. Thought that because she wouldn't do it, he wouldn't. But she said she didn't think he was going to be able to do it.
And not just that, again, the thing with Gypsy that I think we have to put it into kind of her mentality, this is an online relationship most of the time. So you can talk all you want. You
right,
can
it
say,
doesn't
you
mean
can
it's
make
action.
Yeah, you can make all these plans. You can say you're going to do this, but like come time, it must be a horrifying idea. Like I joked around, I'm like, oh God, you're pissing me off. I'm going to murder you. But can I actually envision that happening? Would I do it? No, like just the idea gives me this horrible anxiety. So I think like,
I don't have horrible anxiety. I just don't think I'd be able to survive jail.
I just don't think I could go through with it.
No, I don't
That's
think
the
so
thing.
either.
That's what I like. I don't think I could go through with it.
It's really easy to say, but very hard to do.
Exactly, unless you're just like a complete.
It's not something you can take back, where you're like, shit, this doesn't work for me.
Yeah, and she's never rebelled before this. I mean, what her rebelling was what
she tried to run away twice at the age of 19. Like she was already an adult.
Right.
And that's what she like rebels against her mom.
That's the worst thing that she did at age 19 was rebel at that point. Like this is somebody that clearly doesn't really have any real life experience. So
yeah, because her mom didn't let her have any friends. Her mom was her only friend. She wasn't allowed to interact with people. She wasn't allowed to do anything because it would have blown.
It would have blown the cover. Right.
So basically, she hands him the knife, and Nicholas orders Gypsy to hide in the bathroom and cover her ears because he didn't want her to hear or witness her mom being murdered. Nicholas then went to Dee Dee's room, stabs her several times in her sleep. There is an interview with Nicholas later on the 2020 special, which is actually the first time he ever spoke to someone.
Interesting.
And it said that Dee Dee screamed for help and then screamed for Gypsy several times. And Gypsy actually admitted that she did hear it. She was too scared to get up and help her, although she said she really wanted to. I do think Gypsy loved her mother. I'm not trying to justify anybody's death or murder, but you have to understand where she came to, and she did try to escape, and she just couldn't. So You know, I'm sure she wanted to help her mom.
And it's also not uncommon for somebody that abuses your whole life for you to still love
To
them.
still love them.
It's still your
It's
mother.
like Stockholm syndrome. Like
It's-
you still love them.
It is like Stockholm, and not only that too. It's still the person that takes care of you day in and day out. I'm sure not every day was horrible. I'm sure she had fond
Right, and I'm
memories
sure
with her
that
mother.
remember there was a time where she thought she was sick, and she really thought my mom takes such good care of me. So, but the thing is that you have to also realize who she grew up with, and there's nothing to say that Gypsy doesn't also have these manipulative behaviors. Also, you know what I mean?
Of
Because
course.
right after they murder her mom, they go to her Gypsy's room, have sex, and take $4,000 that the mother had in the house.
Like-
Most of it was actually Gypsy's money though, because it was from her father's child support, but still.
Like mother, like daughter.
Basically, after this, they flee to a motel outside of Springfield. They remain there for several days because you can tell that that they're kind of immature because they don't even know what their next move is. That's what they're doing in the motel room is they're trying to figure out their next room. They didn't even plan this properly. And they're caught on several security cameras in several stores because they have $4,000 now and they're just spending
They're
it.
blowing it, right?
And there's even a recording that Gypsy made of Nicholas in the motel where they're laughing and they're in bed and completely like disconnected with the fact that they just killed her mom. And then there's also an interview with like a cab driver that picked them up when they were by the motel, who said that Gypsy basically looked like she was 12. She had like this really bad wig on, looked super young, sounded like she was 5, but had the attitude of like a 40-year-old woman because she wasn't afraid to tell her off. But because I think Gypsy had never been able to do that, it must be so confusing.
She's probably on an ego trip because
And that's exactly right, because right now, like in this part of the research, it says that she literally believed that they got away with it.
yeah,
Because they hadn't gotten arrested yet, so obviously they got away with it.
Her super ego for the first time in her life has come out, and like she feels unstoppable. She feels untouchable. So
And then another hint that they didn't think this through, but kind of like thought some things. They actually mailed the murder weapon back to Nicholas's home because they didn't want to be caught with it, but they mailed it. They're taking a bus. They were seen at our greenhouse station, and they're noticing that Gypsy's walking around unassisted. She has like this blonde wig on, walking around Greyhound. Now, on the afternoon of June 14th, at Gypsy's urging, Nicholas uses his phone to post 2 updates to Dee Dee's Facebook page. She did this because she wanted people to discover the body. Now, instead of just making like an anonymous phone call to the police or something along those lines, she decides, let's post some random shit on my mom's page, and hopefully somebody would figure out to go look for her and find her body. So the first post read, "That bitch is dead." 17 minutes later, a longer comment suggesting that whoever left her body had violently killed her and raped Gypsy.
And Gypsy posted that?
She made Nicholas post that because she thought that would lead to finding her mom's body. Because she said later on, she states in an interview that she was concerned that several days had passed without anyone discovering her mom's body and that she hoped someone would report the messages to the police and they would find her body. Like, obviously not going about this the right way because that's not the way you do things.
The longer she's there, the less evidence there is. So,
Exactly. So now people are seeing this Facebook post. They know that the language isn't Dee Dee, so they're either thinking that she was reacting to something or they basically thought she was being hacked. And then after the second post, they definitely know something is wrong because at this point it's like, oh, whoever, I murdered her and I raped Gypsy. And of course, everyone still thinks she's this sick little girl. So now they're like,
so
oh
wait
my
a minute.
God.
She wanted it to seem like someone hacked into their Facebook.
She wanted to, I don't know what she was thinking, but
what makes you think that because your mother's posting this? Like if I was friends with Dee Dee on Facebook and it said that bitch is dead and then they were murdered and I raped Gypsy, I'd be like, what's happening? Like
right,
I would.
But she thought that thinking would prompt people to be like, let's call the police. It's like you could have just called the police and whatever.
Yeah.
But that shows you the mentality. Like nothing was wrong with her, and she doesn't have any developmental delays, but she was definitely delayed because she was not in school and she wasn't brought up and she was brought up younger.
Well,
so
she's uneducated. It's not
she
about
definitely
delayed.
doesn't also know like consequences and stuff like that. So now after this second post, people obviously think something is wrong. They start calling the house. There's no answer. They said that they knew that like Gypsy and her mom would like suddenly go on these medical trips unannounced, but they saw that the car was there and that Gypsy's wheelchairs were there. So obviously they couldn't go anywhere if both of those things were there. And for some reason, this also goes to show you the mentality behind Gypsy's mom. There's protective film on the windows, so they can't really see inside. Once nobody answers the door, the neighbors call 911. So the police arrive, but they had to wait for a search warrant to be issued before they could enter, which now all of a sudden, cops want to wait for search warrants. But they allowed one of the neighbors to climb through the window, which to me makes no fucking sense.
Well, they did that because they don't have to be held responsible.
Right, for it. But the neighbor goes inside the house. It says, there's like conflicting reports on this. Like one neighbor said that it was mostly disturbed, but that all of Gypsy's wheelchairs were there. But then there's a video of like the house and like Dee Dee looks like a hoarder. Like, there's stuff all over the place. You have to watch this documentary because it is so creepy that this whole house is in disarray. There's things all over the place. She's obviously hoarding. And then they get to this cabinet, they open it, and it is the most organized cabinet with hundreds of just drugs there for different. And like she labels them in this weird language, like they found seizure medication, and it said like shake baby or baby shake, like just this dumbed down language as to what types of medications they were and what they treated. And then it was also said that under her bed they found a prescription pad that she had stolen.
So she was writing her own
She
prescriptions.
was writing her own prescriptions. So now the warrant gets issued. Police enter the house and find her body. At this point, again, people don't really know what's going on. They're like, oh my God, Dee Dee, Gypsy's not here. She's handicapped. Her wheelchairs aren't here. They're thinking she's in danger because even if she's alive, they're thinking her wheelchair and her medication and the person who takes care of her is here and this person just took her. So a GoFundMe account was also set up to pay for Dee Dee's funeral expenses, and they're thinking possibly Gypsy's if they find out that she's not alive. They fear the worst because they also saw, because she also, like, Dee Dee used to take oxygen tanks every time they went out. They saw the oxygen tank there, all of her medication. They're terrified. All of the neighbors start to gather around. They're starting to figure out what happened. Aaliyah Woodmansey, the friend that Gypsy had, is among those neighbors, and she basically tells the police what she knows about Gypsy's secret boyfriend. She shows them the printouts, and one of them has Nicholas's name. So that's why it's kind of good that she kept those.
Gotcha.
So based on that information, police actually asked Facebook to trace the IP address from which the post on Dee Dee's account had been made, because at this point they know that the person who murdered her did it. And it traces back to Big Bend, Wisconsin, which is where Nicholas Godejohn lives.
Genius.
So they alert the police in Wisconsin. They raid the home, find Gypsy and Nicholas there, and they both surrender and are taken into custody and charged with murder and felony armed criminal action. But at this point, again, people still don't really know what's going on. So the news that Gypsy's okay and safe, they're like, oh my God, thank God, they're so relieved. Meanwhile, she's being held on $1 million bond. It's weird because it'll show you in that documentary that the sheriff, the Greene County sheriff, his name is Jim Arnett. He literally says things are not always what they appear because the case is getting crazy now.
Boy, oh boy, is that
So
true.
the media in Springfield soon report the truth about Gypsy. She had never been sick. She had always been able to walk, and that her mother had made her pretend otherwise using the physical abuse. In the 2020 special, you see Gypsy stated that she knew that she didn't need the feeding tube. She knew that she could walk. The only thing that she believed is that she really did think she had leukemia at one point, and then she discovered later she didn't.
One thing I don't understand, like you said, this must be the uneducated or undeveloped side of her. Why would you believe one diagnosis but not the rest? You know what I mean? Like, why would you only buy one aspect of what your mother's selling to you? I don't know. This whole case sounds pretty insane.
It's insane. So the sheriff at this point tells everybody, don't donate any money to the family until investigators really learn how far this fraud extends. Because at this point, now that you're learning these things, it's like, did Gypsy know? Was she helping her mom dupe people?
Right.
You don't really know what's going on.
Right.
So, but then people, like, it starts to get disclosed how Dee Dee treated Gypsy all those years. And so now the sympathy is shifting from, oh my God, Dee Dee's a victim of this murder, to
Poor
Gypsy was
Gypsy.
the long-term victim of child abuse. Because that's child abuse. It's not like she just made her pretend she was sick. She was injecting her with medications and making her have surgeries that she didn't need.
And stopping her from getting healthy and letting
Right.
her live her own life, which is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to protect your children. You're supposed to teach them, and then they move and they become adults, and that's the cycle
And
of
there's
life.
also a reason why you're supposed to get medications from a doctor. These drug interactions, you can literally kill someone, giving them drugs that do not mix
And
together.
that's
She
why-
could have harmed Gypsy so much just by giving her the drugs to try to make her pretend that she was
And that's
sick.
why she looked tiny, and that's why she looked frail. That's all those medications. You don't know what kind of long-term effect that's going to have on somebody, especially someone who's not sick. Those are for people that are sick. They're not meant to be for healthy people. So
And mixing all of them.
yeah, that's terrible. If you've seen any of those commercials, the gajillion of side effects that they name on those things. Imagine taking all of those things at the same time.
Exactly.
Of course, she was never going to be the same. Of course, she's not going to be
And
mentally.
it's a wonder that she doesn't have, because if you see her now, she's like fine. And I'm like, how did you not have more extensive damage to you? It's insane.
I mean, there's also this was a fairly recent case. We got to see what this is long term, like the
Oh, yeah.
longevity of it.
Of course, because you never know. Like, things that you do when you're in your teens and 20s, like, show up when you're 50 and 60.
Mhm.
It just happens. You got to
Yep.
take care of yourself.
Yep.
So at this point, the charge of first-degree murder can actually carry the death penalty where they live in Missouri.
Wow.
or it's life without parole. That's the two options for it. But the prosecutor actually said right away that he wasn't seeking the death penalty for neither Gypsy nor Nicholas. And you can see it's just so like it's weird when they first get arrested and the Gypsy really that's why like some of it is a little confusing because you don't know if she's also manipulative because she really denies it in the beginning. She's like, oh my God, why would I hurt my mom? I wouldn't hurt my mom. And then slowly you start to learn the truth. But her attorney actually obtains her medical records from New Orleans. And that's how he's able to kind of like build up her case and possibly get a plea deal because he basically can prove she was made to believe she was sick. She really went through all of these things. And if you think about it, even if Gypsy did know, she was still put through all of those procedures. Regardless of what, like, she still went through a lot.
Right.
That's a lot to put yourself through. I don't even like going for a filling.
That's
insane.
I can't imagine the resent she must have had for her own mother.
So her attorney actually later on told BuzzFeed, because BuzzFeed wrote an article about it, Gypsy was so malnourished that during the year that she was in county jail, she gained 14 pounds. Normally people lose weight when they go to jail because they don't eat the food because the food is gross. She gained 14 pounds because she was being fed through a feeding tube. And in the research I was doing, she was in her 20s and still getting the children's mixture and the children's formula and doses.
Wow.
So she was severely malnourished because it made her look younger. So imagine going to jail for a year with the nastiest food that we can imagine, and she's gaining 14 pounds.
Horrible.
So in July 2015, she accepts a plea bargain and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. She actually gets a plea bargain for second-degree murder once they're able to provide like the medical records and show basically what she went through with her mom. But Nicholas Gaujean still was facing first-degree murder charge and the felony charge.
Makes sense.
And it's because both he and Gypsy agreed he was actually the one that killed her. So he still faced it. He also refused to plea bargain. He didn't want to plea bargain. Gypsy did. So who knows, if she had gone to trial, she could have been charged, worse.
Yeah.
But he decided to go through with the trial. In January of 2017, Nicholas's trial was postponed because the prosecutor requested a second psychiatric exam because his lawyers kept saying that he had an IQ of 82 and was on the autism spectrum, and they thought he had diminished capacity and couldn't stand trial. At this point, he had actually waived his right to a jury trial and then changed his mind. So I think that's probably how they also got to say that he wasn't really mentally able to do this.
Gotcha.
So in December of 2017, so mind you, they filed this motion in January 2017, and it's not till December of 2017 that they set his trial for November of 2018. Remember, you're in jail this whole time, so they've been in jail for a couple years at this point. During the opening arguments, prosecutors alleged that Nicholas had deliberated for over a year before the crime, while his lawyers tried to point out that he had autism and said that Gypsy had really formulated the whole crime and that he was just like a love-struck person who had just done what he was asked to do. The next day, prosecutors actually showed jurors text messages, sometimes were sexually explicit, that Gypsy and Nicholas had shared in the week leading up to the murder, often using various personas and mentioning the knife he used. In some of the texts, Nicholas asked Gypsy for details about Dee Dee's room and her sleeping habits. If you don't really understand the different degrees of murder, one of the things about first-degree murder is it has to be premeditated, and this is obviously premeditated if he's asking her for the details of her room and her sleeping habits.
Right.
And it also goes to show you that even if you did think he had diminished capacity, he had enough capacity to question. He planned it.
He planned it.
It might not have been a great plan, but he planned it. And then they also showed the video of his interview with police after his arrest where he flat out admits to killing Dee Dee. Gypsy also testifies on the third day of the trial. She stated while that she did suggest to Nicholas that he kill her mother to end her mother's abuse, she said she had also considered getting pregnant by him in the hope that once she was carrying his child, Dee Dee would have to accept him. And although she gave him the knife that she eventually used to commit the murder, she also stole baby clothes from Walmart during a shopping trip in case they went with the other plan. I don't think they're really thinking things through. I think they were planning for both plans, but it says here that Nicholas never told her what he thought about the pregnancy plan, that she's saying that he just went with the murder one. So after 4 days only, this case goes to the jury, like they're done. The jurors basically had the options of either finding Nicholas not guilty or guilty of one of the 3 degrees of murder. So they were trying to see, was it involuntary manslaughter, second-degree murder, or first-degree murder? So that's basically their option. Either he's not guilty of any or he's guilty of one of the degrees of murder. After only 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with the verdict of guilty of first-degree murder and armed criminal action.
I knew it. Because that's Missouri for you, right? It's Missouri. They got charged. Yep.
So now,
they don't play.
In February of 2019, he was sentenced to life in prison for the murder conviction, which is the only possible sentence he could get since they didn't go after the death penalty. Now, he asked the judge for leniency on the armed criminal action charge, which carries a minimum sentence of only 3 years, saying he had fallen blindly in love with Gypsy. My whole thing is you already have life in prison, so what difference does it make how many years you get for this? You're serving it with your life sentence. So if he gives you 3 years, what does that mean? You're still doing life in prison? I don't really, like, dude, what the fuck? But whatever, he asked for leniency, gets 25 years on that charge to run concurrent with the life sentence. Not sure how else to serve that.
I love when they make those kinds of things.
Like life plus 100 years to serve concurrently. How else would you serve it?
So I'm gonna die, be reincarnated in this trail. Is that how that works?
And then do another 100 years, not in order?
Yeah, so I'm gonna spend 3 lifetimes in this prison. I think that's just the law's way of telling you that you're never ever gonna see the light of day again. That's essentially it. But I mean, life, that's kind of implied with
right?
with the
like
word
you're gonna
life.
die in here.
Isn't that
Right.
life
That's what life in
implicates
prison
life,
implies?
right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So at this point, everybody always appeals. So his lawyers asked for a new trial, and they're arguing a couple of things. They argued that apparently during the trial, you'll learn through some of the interviews you'll see in documentaries that one of the things that was said was that he was considering raping Dee Dee during the night of the murder, and they don't think that the jury should have been allowed to hear that. And then there were questions about his mental state. So the state psychologist testified, but not Nicholas's actual psychologist. So they felt that Nicholas' psychologist should have been able to testify because it would establish his diminished capacity, but that the state shouldn't have sent their psychologist because he doesn't really know
that I have to agree.
I have to agree with it too, but at the end of the day, the judge denied it.
It's the judge's call, but
and he basically stated that the appeals court can handle it. If they found that there's an error, let them find the error. He was denying the motion. But I have to say I do agree with that. You cannot have someone who doesn't know a person. You can't have a psychologist that hasn't worked with that person determine their capacity because you don't know them. You know them for a couple of minutes and you're only knowing what you've learned about since the murder was committed. Meanwhile, this other psychologist who's probably worked with him for years and can tell you about his mental capacity should have been allowed to testify. Whether or not it would have made a difference, you don't know. But things like that, or why solid cases that you know where the person is guilty, fall the fuck apart because you allowed dumb shit like that to happen. And who knows? This was just last month, so for all we know, he's gonna appeal that and get a whole new trial just because of that error.
That's crazy.
Who knows? We know that Gypsy's already in jail, serving her 10-year sentence, and now he's sentenced to life in prison. Obviously, you've got to have some reactions out of all of these people that were basically duped. That's what the word that they use on the documentary. They were fooled, and people just they can't figure out how they didn't know, how they were so easily deceived. They feel stupid. Their friend Aaliyah, whose information led to their arrest, said that she's literally cried because she could not believe that. She couldn't believe it. I personally wouldn't believe it. People are like, how could I have been so stupid? But even with knowing all of this, the community still arranged a candlelight vigil for Dee Dee, and 60 people showed up, which is still a lot considering she fooled everybody. And even Habitat for Humanity had a comment because they built them a house and said that they were just really deeply saddened by the whole situation. However, they contacted Dee Dee's family in Louisiana, and they basically said they don't regret her death. Her stepmother and father, who again, they accused her of trying to poison her stepmother, and her nephew stated that she deserved her fate. Gypsy had been punished as much as she needed to be. They would not pay for her funeral. They at one point refused to pick up her ashes, and when they did pick up her ashes, they flushed them down the toilet. Which at the end of the day, regardless of how horrible you are, I don't know if someone deserves to have the last bits of them flushed down the toilet.
You know what? Maybe that was a little harsh, but at the same time, I also feel like I found out, like, if I had a sick niece or something like that, and for 20 years I was convinced that she was sick, and then to find out that it was my sister-in-law who was faking it the whole time, I would lose all respect for her, all credibility,
remember,
all
she did
anything.
Poison her stepmom.
That's what I'm saying. So this is clearly a horrible person, and I'm sure her family, of all people, have known her whole life. They probably have even more evidence of what a terrible person.
Of course, like we know basic bits and pieces of her childhood, but we don't really know what she was like, and she obviously was not a good kid because she used to steal shit whenever she didn't get her way. When someone dies, you're supposed to get sad, but if that's a horrible person, like, some people are just like, they're a horrible person, I'm not going to grieve them.
And then to boot, it's like, it's terrible because she's still getting attention because...
Of course, it's all over the news.
In death, she's still being talked about.
She got all the attention she wanted.
And she's still keeping Gypsy locked up, just in a different way. She's keeping her in prison because of her death, because she had no other plan of escape. What else was this girl going to do? This woman was killing her. If I were her attorney, I would have argued self-defense.
Because at that point, you had to think, her mother was going to keep this up as long as she was living.
And then, what was she going to do?
Her mother wasn't that old. Her mother was 48 when she died. She had a long time of having to pretend that she was sick, and honestly, she couldn't do it anymore. If I was her family, I just never would have picked up the ashes.
That's.
I would just be like, fuck it, let's keep it. I don't care.
I don't know. I probably would have flushed it on the toilet.
They also spoke to her father. He was actually less critical. He actually seems like such a good guy. And he said, quote, I think Dee Dee's problem was she started a web of lies and there was no escaping after. It was like a tornado got started. A lot nicer than I would have said it, because that wouldn't have been how nice I would have said it. And they did ask Gypsy why she thought her mom did this, and she said that she think her mom did this for attention that she was seeking because she wasn't really loved or whatever. Because that's an excuse. So now Gypsy's serving her sentence in a Missouri prison, and the interviewer in a 2020 special basically asked her how the situation with her mother compared to life in prison. And Gypsy said, and I quote, I feel like I'm freer in prison than living with my mom because now I'm allowed to just live like a normal woman. And one of the things that stuck out to me in this interview is that the interviewer was like, but prison life isn't normal. And Gypsy's like, well, maybe for other people it isn't, but for me it is. This is the most normal and free she's ever been. If you see her now, she's got long hair. Her figure has filled in. She's gained some weight. She looks her age now. She still talks like with a really soft, like mousy voice.
She always will.
I have to say that prison might have been a good thing not a good thing for her, because she could have probably still done this outside of prison, but she's free. Like, she doesn't feel imprisoned.
Dee Dee deserved to get flushed out of the toilet because you sat there and the person that you're supposed to protect and love forever, and you're supposed to wish them well and take care of them and treat them like your flesh and blood, which is what she was. She used her as a manipulative tool. She was not a real person to her. She was somebody that she could get people to make her feel good about herself, to make them feel bad, to get a free house, to get free help from the government, from our taxes. No, she deserves exactly what she got at the end.
Because at the end of the day, like, it would have been one thing for you to just have Munchausen's and make yourself sick, but you made a kid sick. And the thing is that this is how Gypsy's a little bit different than her, because even though she feels freer in prison, she did talk to Dr. Phil in 2017. And Gypsy said that he asked her, like, do you think you deserve to be in prison for what you did? And she said, I firmly believe that no matter what, murder is not okay. But at the same time, I don't believe I deserve as many years as I got. I do deserve to spend some time in prison for that crime, but I also understand why it happened, and I don't believe that I'm in the right place to get the help I need.
I agree.
And I agree. She need help.
Why is it that she didn't get 5 years in a psychiatric facility?
Pretending you were sick for 20-something years was enough of a punishment for her. The girl had a beating too for God's sake.
And what did she do? She lived. She literally was born. That's what this poor girl has gone through her whole life. The person that was supposed to teach her right from wrong was doing wrong the entire time of her life. How responsible? What's her culpability here? You know what I mean? We have to look at it in the grand scheme of things. I know that she did this in a red state. Had she done this in New York, this girl would be walking free today.
I just feel like, yes, murder is wrong. I don't believe that you have the right to take somebody else. But there's also circumstances. That's why there's a difference between a murderer and a serial killer, because almost anyone could be driven to murder under the right circumstance, but not everybody's a serial killer.
This was self-defense because her mother was killing her.
She tried to escape twice.
She tried to escape. She tried to grow up and be a responsible person. You don't think that she thought of a million other things before this came to that?
And what
Dee Dee was the cause of her own demise.
And I think that the fact that she waited until she was of age to even try to start doing things shows you she at least waited for her to be of legal age to be like, all right, mom, legal age, let me go. And in my head, I'm thinking, what would I have been thinking if I was her? And I would have been thinking, oh my God, I cannot live. How much longer is she going to try to get away with this? How much more is she going to abuse me? Because at that point, she's already fighting back. So what else is she going to do to keep me like this? Does she intend on killing me eventually to get the sympathy off my death? That's where my mind went. My mind went to, what was Dee Dee's ultimate goal? Was it for her to eventually kill her because of all these ailments and then just get the sympathy off of her death? How do you know her mom wasn't going to kill her later?
And not just that too, there's only so long you can pretend you have a teenager. When she's been on Ronald McDonald's, when she's been on TV.
Eventually she was going to hit her 20s,
We all knew she was going to grow up. What were you going to do then, Dee Dee? You don't think about those things. She was already 23 years old and she was able to pull this off. How much longer? Would she have gone into her 30s? And then what? She'd be useless to her. She would have killed her.
And what would have happened if Dee Dee died on her own and suddenly Gypsy started walking? Eventually we were all going to figure out what the hell happened.
And then who would get in trouble? Gypsy again. Because she'd be charged with fraud, even though it was her
because
mother's
at that
idea.
point she was an adult and still doing it. So she did not a lot of options.
This is definitely what the fuck
and
is. So.
they actually asked her how she feels about Nicholas, and she said at this point, this is a pretty recent interview. At this point, it's been a few years she's been in prison, and she said, well, if you had asked me 2 years ago, I would tell you that I was still in love with him, but right now she just says she feels sorry for him. And she basically states, there's a big difference between conspiring to murder someone and actually murdering them. And she felt that she was different because she didn't actually murder her mother. But Nicholas says he actually still loves Gypsy. Gypsy also stated that she did, once she heard the whole Munchausen by proxy thing, She actually started researching it and said, my mother had every symptom. She said, I think she would have made a perfect mom for someone who was actually sick, just not her. But according to the family, Gypsy sometimes exhibits the same sociopathic, manipulative behaviors,
Of
which is
course
why
she
she
does.
needs psychiatric help, and being in jail is not going to help her, because when she gets out of jail, she's going to need intensive therapy, because it's possible she might wind up just like her mom.
Of course she does, because that's what she saw growing up. That's the example she was led with. Everyone knows it's so much nurture goes into who you are. It's not just your nature, it's your nurture. That's what your mom did. She schemed and was slick her whole life. She's gonna have that same tendency, because that's who.
What else does she know?
How she survived. Of course, that's what she's doing.
So basically, this is, the case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. This case, there was an HBO documentary called Mommy, Dead, and Dearest. There was a 2018 documentary called Gypsy's Revenge. There was a 2020 special. It's we'll put it up on our website, theerieamericas.com, but it's season 40, episode 15. And on March 20th, there will be a Hulu series on it, and it's starring Joey King and Patricia Arquette, who I absolutely fucking love. So I'm gonna be watching it. We also will put it up. It's coming out on the day that this episode comes out, and we'll put it on our website as well.
Sounds good.
And we definitely need a Who Does That right now, because this case is just insane.
Who does that? Who does that? Who does that? Who does that?
So I have a good one today. On
Okay.
International Women's Day, I thought this was quite appropriate. So via HuffPost.com, the headline reads, unlicensed gun owner accidentally shoots himself in penis. Thought it was really appropriate.
Okay.
An unlicensed gun owner in Indiana is recovering in a hospital after accidentally shooting himself in the penis. Mark Anthony Jones, 46, told police in Marion that he was taking a morning walk with the High Point 9mm handgun he was carrying in his waistband, quote, began to slip, according to the smoking gun. Jones told the police that when he, quote, reached down to adjust the unholstered gun, it discharged, shooting a bullet that entered just above his penis and exited his scrotum, according to Marion Police Department news release posted on Facebook. The release notes that Jones does not have a license to carry this handgun. Investigators have forwarded the case to the Grant County prosecuting attorney, who will determine if Jones will face any criminal charges for the self-inflicted wound.
Can you imagine getting charged for shooting yourself in the dick?
You're in prison, and they're like, yo, what'd you do? I shot my dick. Like, how could you...
So, now you have, a fucked up dick, and you're in prison.
Yeah, good luck there, Mark Anthony. I hope you shooting yourself in the dick is the worst part about this entire situation for you. And that's a pretty shitty situation in and of itself. But I hope it doesn't go any further for you, because you just sound like a dumbass. That's what that boils down to.
And you definitely should not have a license to carry a gun, because obviously you don't know what to do with it.
Who the fuck puts their gun in the waistband of their
If it's
clothes?
slipping, you don't just... I don't own a gun, but I can just imagine I wouldn't put it in my waistband, and if it was slipping, I don't think I'd just be like, whoops, slipping, and reach into my pants and go get it.
I can't imagine being so comfortable. I'm going to keep it by my private area and just be like, oh yeah, here we go. Let me move it around. I don't think people take guns seriously enough.
All right, let me make sure that my finger is nowhere near the trigger.
Or, hello, make sure it's locked. There's a way to lock your gun, people. I don't understand. I can't.
I don't understand.
Yeah. And no, that was not from Florida. That was from Indiana. One solid week of no crazy Florida news. There was one, but I was like, nah, I'll give them a break this week. So you're welcome.
No, that one was a good one.
You're welcome.
That was a good one.
But that is our crazy story for the day. Good case. I hope that Gypsy Rose can get some serious help when she gets out.
Absolutely, because that 10-year prison sentence, when she gets out, she'll be like 32. She still has plenty of time to get herself together and get some help and hopefully try to live somewhat normal life. I don't know how normal it's going to be, especially with this movie coming out, and everybody's going to know about it, but hopefully she gets the help she needs and she can have some sort of normal life after this.
Totally. But we hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please feel free to go on our Instagram.
Write us an email.
Yep.
Subscribe. Leave us a 5-star review. Tell us how much you love us. And hopefully you'll listen again next week.
Definitely. We will drop again next Wednesday as promised. And I hope you guys have a fantastic week.
Bye.
Bye.